Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Vital Psychedelic Conversation webinar. My name is David Drapkin. I'm the Director of Education and Training at Psychedelics Today. I'm one of the creators of the Vital program. And yeah, I'm a social worker, a psychotherapist. I live in Israel with my wife and two kids. And I've got a new shirt that I'm wearing for the first time today, and I feel very happy about that. And I'm joined by Tiffany Hurd, who's one of our Vital students in this current third cohort. And we've been wanting to work together for ages. And so this is the beginning of it. Really good to see you, Tiffany.
So good to see you as well. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I know this has been a long time coming, so it's amazing to be here and the timing feels good. So I'm excited to talk about microdosing with everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
And the
really good
shirt
to.
is amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's not forget the shirt. The shirt's amazing.
It's great.
So I want to just tell you folks a little bit about why this is a Vital Psychedelic Conversation. What does that mean? So we've done quite a few podcasts with instructors from our Vital course. We just did one on Friday that came out with Dr. Casey Palios, one of our teachers, around deconstructing healing and understanding symptoms as signals and in healing intelligence. So what we try and do in these conversations, this is an hour we've got with Tiffany, we talk about something that's really important. Either it's kind of topical, it's in the news, or it's something that's not in topical, it's not in the news, but it should be. And so with microdosing, it is in the news. It's spoken about all the time. It's kind of hip, sexy, lots of questions about it. What is it? You know, how do you do it? Lots of celebrities are doing it. So it is in the news. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And it's actually more nuanced because there's a relationship piece here, because it's an invitation to really step into knowing self and knowing your body in particular, being embodied and figuring out, well, what do I do with these experiences? How do I make meaning and integrate it? And so this is what our Vital course is all about. So I am going to do a bit of a shameless plug right now. It's coming from the heart because Vital is a really, really special program. It has been existing for 3 years. We're about to start the fourth cohort of Vital in September. And it's a course that is open to clinical licensed practitioners like me, a social worker, doctors, nurses, psychologists. And it's open to unlicensed practitioners, people like might be a coach, or they might be, say, working as a yoga teacher or a naturopath or a tarot card reader or a military veteran, a rabbi, a death doula, a chaplain. So we really do have the most diverse group of students in any psychedelic training course because we believe that this psychedelic renaissance resurgence isn't just a medical clinical monopoly. This is an ancient culture of humanity that has continued despite the criminalization of drugs. And so by giving training that is top-notch around the ethical, responsible, and efficient, effective use of psychedelics, we're helping people kind of minimize harm and risk factors and maximize just the benefits and the beauty of incorporating psychedelics into real life. So if you are interested in applying to Vital, the website is vitalpsychedelictraining.com. Early bird discounts of $2,000 are available till July 22nd, and admissions are open till August 23rd. The course starts September 17th. And this time we're doing something very new. We're introducing what's called a specialization pathway. So if you want to enroll and then say, I'm going to specialize in one of these 5 areas, then when you graduate, you get a major, a specialization in that track. And microdosing is one of our 5 majors that you can really specialize in over your year, alongside the other 4 courses, which are spiritual emergency and emergence, somatics and trauma, regenerative business and leadership, and Jungian psychology. So those are our 5 pathways. And so if you want to reach out to us, you can just email. We're doing interviews right now. And yeah, we would love to see you in Vital. And before we jump in, Tiffany, I just wanted to ask from the heart, how is Vital going as a student in our third cohort? What are some of your experiences so far? What are you loving the most in the experience halfway through?
Yeah. Yeah, Vital has been really amazing in a lot of ways. And it was a little bit different for me compared to a lot of the students that are in the class, because I've kind of been in the psychedelic space for quite some time now. And I, of course, knew that going into Vital, but I wanted to just continue to learn like what was the most up-to-date research, what was kind of the most like things being talked about in the space, and then continue to just be a student and learn more about integration models and harm reduction. I feel like there's so many amazing teachers that come in and share their wisdom and share their expertise with whichever they're focused on within the psychedelic space. So it's been really cool to just learn different angles and different approaches, and to just continue to remain humble and to learn and to grow. And I've taken a lot from it already. So I'm excited to continue to see what the second half holds. And the community is also amazing too. The community is nice. It's a nice blend of, there's a big group and then it's broken down into, a weekly small group, which is really nice. And then if you want, it's kind of how much effort you put in is how much you're really going to get out of it. And so we have like a small group chat and people sometimes will get together in person. So if you're looking for community while also learning and growing in the psychedelic space, it's a no-brainer. It's a great program. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, community is amazing. I've loved meeting people from all over the world there, and doing different things. And what are the electives you've chosen for your summer?
I picked the neuroscience, and then I picked microdosing as well. I love Casey. Yeah, her and I have done some work
Casey
together,
Gay.
and
Amazing.
yeah, and I was like, I want to see what she's teaching about. It's always nice to see. So I'm excited to start with her and see what she's talking about with microdosing. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So Tiffany, without further ado, I would love to hand over to you. And we've got another 50 odd minutes, so feel free to go through your slides, and then we'll save some Q&A for the end. And if anybody wants to pop a question in the Q&A box, just pop it there, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end of Tiffany's presentation where we'll open up the Q&A box and ask those questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You can see my screen and everything okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just need to full screen it.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me, David, Psychedelics Today. I'm really excited to be here. And microdosing is honestly one of my favorite topics to talk about in the space. There's, like David shared, there's so much publicity and mainstream with microdosing right now. And I think there's so much positivity that, of course, is coming within that. And there's also a lot of controversy and there's a lot of different opinions. And so I'm excited to just be having the conversation of, whatever wants to come through. And specifically today, the approach that we're going to be taking is more so how to utilize microdosing within the framework of with coaching, or that could be, coaching, mentoring. It could even be within a therapeutic setting. But overall, how can you kind of combine this practice with the support and specific frameworks and an intentional practice that can ultimately support you, whether that be through personal growth, professional growth, any specific healing, really whichever your reason for microdosing and working with psychedelics in general might be. So I'm Tiffany Hurd. I'll give you a little quick bio here in a moment. So with that, today, just some topics we'll be talking about. So of course, we'll just kind of start from the basics of what is microdosing, why people are microdosing. I'm going to be specifically speaking about microdosing through the lens of psilocybin mushrooms. Of course, you can microdose with other medicines. One of the other main ones is with LSD. And there will, of course, be some crossover with, like the protocols and things that you can use with microdosing, as well as some of the the benefits and just neurologically some of the things that I'll go into as to some commonalities with both. Both very different medicines, both very different experiences, but I just want to highlight that so that the focus will mainly be with psilocybin mushrooms here. And so I'll go over some benefits. I'll go over why regulating your emotions with microdosing is one of the best things that you can understand how to do to really effectively receive what this practice and what this medicine is really offering you. I think a lot of people tend to dismiss that part. And I think there's a huge opportunity, whether that be with microdosing or just honestly psychedelics, or we can even remove psychedelics just in general, but especially when we start to combine them with psychedelic medicine. And then, of course, I'll go over just some preparation, integration frameworks that can support the process as well, who microdosing may not be for. And then, of course, I'll go over just some dosing guidelines and some common microdosing regimens that are practiced out there. And then, as David shared, of course, like as questions come in, feel free to put them in the chat and we can stop and go if that feels good. I'm not going to be looking at the chat. So David, if there's a question that you feel like makes sense to ask in the moment, I'm happy to pause. Otherwise, of course, there'll be some time at the end. And then, yeah, of course, just a disclaimer to keep things clean, keep things in integrity. This information, it's just content and educational, informational purposes only. I am, of course, not a doctor. I'm not prescribing anything. And, make your own decisions at your own risk. I'm here just giving you some amazing information. So yeah, just a little bit about me, so you know who this person is that's talking to you today. So I'm a microdosing plant medicine mentor. I also do some speaking. I've been in the psychedelic space for about 7 years now, a little over 7 years. I have a huge background in actually the complete opposite industry of this. Not that this is an industry just yet, but in the pharmaceutical, medical device, healthcare industry. And so I actually used to sell prescriptions to doctors to prescribe to their patients. And so now I have this completely different approach to what actual medicine really is. And so I'm excited about that. And so with that, I have about 14 years of experience in business development, sales consulting, which I basically now utilize that within the psychedelic space and support companies from that perspective. I have about 10 years of coaching, emotional intelligence training, leadership coaching specifically. I've guided a little bit over 500 clients now through microdosing protocols through the lens of coaching, mentoring. Trauma-informed, plant medicine apprenticeships, breathwork certified. I'm in psychedelics today. So this just kind of paints the story of my background. I was an athlete. And just the experience that I have, and I like that I don't just take one lens and one approach to things. I like that there's a lot of versatile, because especially in the psychedelic space, it's very individualized. And I find that having just more experience with a variety of things has been able to allow me to support my clients in a much more effective way. And so what is microdosing? If you Google microdosing, you're going to see a ton of different things that pop up. I'm sure you already have done that at some point in your life. But there is, in my opinion, no true definition. There's not one definition of microdosing. There's a bunch of different ways of viewing it, but I do think that there are some foundational aspects as to what this practice actually is and what it actually means. And so, you can read this, but with microdosing with psilocybin mushrooms, I do believe that it can be defined as essentially taking 1/10 to 1/20th of what would be known as a normal psychedelic dose. And so the idea is that the dose is going to be very subtle. You're not going to be hallucinating. You should feel very social. You should be able to drive a car. You should be able to take your work calls, feel really good. You should maybe feel a little bit more open, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more creative. And so the idea is that microdosing is not really intended to just be a one-day, one-time experience like you might have with a normal dose or, a ceremonial type of setting, but it's more so a consistent practice that you want to kind of refine over a certain amount of time with the set protocol. The protocol can start to, and I'll go into this a little bit more, but the protocol, you can start to microdose more intentionally versus like set days and a set protocol. But if you are somebody who's new or just trying to, cultivate a practice, I have found that people are more successful with their practice when they have the consistency of it. And so ideally, what that summarizes is essentially you'd probably be microdosing around 2 to 3 times a week, usually for about 30 days minimum, just to give yourself in your body just the opportunity to see like, okay, how is this actually feeling, giving it time, making adjustments. and then up to 60 days with usually a clear intention, a clear purpose. It's always nice to know why you're doing something, why you're going into something, what you're looking to really receive and experience out of it, so that there's that meaning and there's that purpose as to why you're here and what you want to receive. And then the idea is to really maintain a certain dosage amount. That's where the coaching is really nice, because it can help you really refine that and work with different doses to find what really works for me. How do I work with this medicine? What feels really good and what's really effective. And then I find that implementing wellness modalities, rituals, I know David mentioned, this is a very ancient practice. This goes thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years within the context of rituals. And so the medicine tends to really gravitate towards that, and it does support kind of deepening that practice. So think kind of somewhat immediate, but lasting results over a longer period of time versus all at once, and then integrating that. It's more so you get to kind of integrate as you're going, which is really nice. And so I put this in here yesterday when I was making some updates, because I thought this was, let me get this over here, really interesting. There's been a lot of kind of buzz happening right now in the psychedelic space, specifically with just the publicity that microdosing has been getting. And it's been getting a lot more publicity outside from this study. But most of the research is more so within the therapeutic setting, or targeted more towards a higher dose setting versus focused on microdosing. So it's nice to see that there is a lot more that is coming out. It might not be specific data and research, although it is coming in. Just in general, that's being talked about. So this is a pretty great study. This is actually just happened in June, the end of June. This came out, and so RAND, so they're a nonprofit research organization, and they recently shared that through all the data and the research that they've been collecting over the last year with just psychedelics, people using psychedelic substances, they found that the data is showing that psilocybin has the highest, not just past year, but also the past month, of those working in the US between the ages of 18 and older. They've been working with psilocybin the most. And they collected data that approximately 8 million people had used psilocybin within 2023, which is pretty insane to think about. And there is a lot of controversy with this study out right now too, because people are like, okay, well, how do they actually know the specifics? And there's just a lot of questions going around. But the fact that this data exists is pretty fascinating to me. And what's even more fascinating is among the people that reported the use of psilocybin, out of those 8 million, nearly half had reported that they were microdosing the last time that they used it. So I find that this paints a really interesting story, because this shows how many new people are really working with psychedelics and how many new people are working with microdosing specifically, which, I'll get into a little bit more, but microdosing is such a great way to start and kind of come out of the psychedelic closet and kind of dip your toe in and kind of see, okay, how does this work? How does this feel? Without, needing to go into a bigger dose that, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot that can come around that. So that's a whole other webinar, but this was just really fascinating to me and I wanted to share this. Oops. There we go. Oh, there we go. So why are people microdosing? It's a good segue. There's so many people that are microdosing. So why are all these people microdosing? And so what I find just through what's happening in the space, what's happening in the people that I work with, what's happening from feedback with other microdosing coaches, guides, what have you, people in therapeutic settings, some common threads are that people are really looking for holistic alternative options to either not going on medication whatsoever, psychiatric medication, SSRIs, or beginning to taper off that process. And so, as a society, we've really been kind of conditioned that the medication, the pharmaceutical approach is really the only way to alleviating mental health conditions or, things along those lines, kind of more so the Band-Aid approach. And not that I am bashing medication whatsoever, but it's nice to know that that's not the only option anymore, that microdosing has been shown to be really effective for supporting this process and the specific medical conditions that people are seeking medications for: anxiety, depression, addiction, things along those lines. People are microdosing for just the healing benefits that they're reading about, or they're seeing in the mainstream media, that people close to them, their friends, their family, are really being impacted, and they're sharing those valuable experiences with them. And it's like, oh, there's a relatability in that, like, oh, I'm experiencing that, or I'm seeing that that's supporting you. I'm now curious to see how this might support me as well. I would say the incredible research and data that continues to be presented publicly, that tends to really support our society when we see really credible institutions, Harvard, John Hopkins, where they're coming out with this valid proof that this can be really supportive and healing and effective for many people. That tends to pique more of a curiosity and kind of, building that trust. I would say alleviating stress, anxiety, depression, addiction, kind of went over that already. There's this whole therapeutic component to psychedelics in general, microdosing, but there's also this whole other side that is connected to like developing healthier habits, supporting you with optimizing your wellness, with business performance, with creativity, connecting and opening up more spiritually, developing a deeper connection with yourself and others. There's all these amazing opportunities to really, at the end of the day, and I know David kind of brought this in, is connecting back to your true self. And really what we all want to do in some degree is to come back into that. And so this looks great on paper. You can read this slide and say, yes, I want this, and yes, I want to feel this and get support with this. But something to keep in mind that I'll go into in a little bit as well is that it's not a magic pill. You're not just going to microdose and wake up and this is all of a sudden here. It does require your active participation. It requires your intention. It requires some support to really make sure that you have kind of a roadmap to how you're going to actually receive that. So today's data and research, I kind of collected a bunch of information and combined it into kind of the three main areas that are honing in and targeting into what's actually happening neurobiologically speaking, so that these benefits are actually, existing and effective. And so, like I said, a lot of this research and conclusion of what I'll share momentarily is connected to just psilocybin in general. You can also throw in LSD and other psychedelics into this as well. But I do find that microdosing falls into this category as well, because we are working with psilocybin. I don't think it really, the dosing range in terms of ceremony and microdosing, I don't want to say that it doesn't matter, because there is a difference. But we're finding that there's a lot of benefits, not just with the high dose, but also with the small dose of a psychedelic as well. So I'll go into that here in a moment. And so one of the main reasons as to why a lot of the benefits do exist and are possible is because of what's actually happening in the body when we're working with psychedelics, when we're working with psilocybin. And so I'm sure many of you have seen this image here on the left with the placebo and then psilocybin. And so it's really fascinating to see, the placebo is you're not on any psychedelic. That's just your normal, regions of the brain. And then you can see here with psilocybin, there's so many regions that are firing off and that are so much more active. And so that could be a great thing. And it also cannot be a great thing if you don't understand how to effectively process what you're experiencing and what's happening in the body. And so just something to consider, and I'll touch on that a little bit more in the next few slides. But one of the main things that's happening here is psilocybin is rewiring your brain. It's creating new neural pathways. And so it's promoting neuroplasticity, which is essentially what you're seeing here, that with more like the active and the neural connections that are forming within the brain. And so this is where when our brains are more plastic and more malleable like this, we're a lot less resistant to making specific changes, such as healthier habits or forming new, healthier ways of being and thinking, and just more creativity, or just creating healthier habits, like things along those lines that on our day-to-day might seem a little challenging or might be very subconscious and not fully consciously on the forefront of our everyday ways of being. We all of a sudden have more of this opportunity and more of a desire to feel more inspired and feel more motivated, essentially, to start to make those changes. And so as you pair that, as I'll go into that a little bit more, as you pair that with support and frameworks and coaching or therapy, it tends to really optimize and accelerate that process so that you can receive those changes a lot more effectively. And then I would say the second way is psilocybin is decreasing your brain's fear and anxiety responses. And so this is called the amygdala part of your brain that you can see here in this image. This part of our brain is directly connected to our behavioral and our physiological responses. And so it's usually a very loud, very active part of our brain. And so when we're working with psilocybin, this very, very active part of our brain actually starts to slow down and get quiet. And that can be really, really effective, because all of a sudden, when we're kind of trying to do all these things at once, and there's anxiety, or there might be a fear response, it's like, whew, all right, we can like slow down, we can get a little bit more quiet, we can start to get more present with ourselves. Maybe our anxiety or our stress isn't as loud. And so there could be a lot of effective processing within that space when our bodies can kind of relax into that. And then the third piece is psilocybin is known for amplifying our emotions. And so this is kind of the part that isn't really talked about all that much, where whether it's subconscious or whether it's suppressed or whether we are aware of it, oftentimes a lot of people will stop working with psychedelics, stop microdosing, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm really emotional, or I didn't realize that these things were going to come to the surface. And so it's a really good experience, or it can be a really good experience, when we understand how to process what's coming up and what to do with this information. And so it's not to say that every time you work with psychedelics or every time you work with psilocybin that all of a sudden all these emotions are coming to the surface. But for the most part, because of what's happening neurobiologically speaking, what's happening with our nervous system, for the most part, things are going to open up more within you. Things are going to come to the surface, because ultimately that's what's wanting to come in and out and through. And that's where the juicy stuff is. Honestly, that's where the good stuff is. That's where you can really do some deep, deep healing. Or we take the healing component out of it. That's where you can kind of start to get out of your own way, and you can access new ways of thinking because of the new pathways that are being created in the brain. And so there's a lot that's available for you when you can understand, okay, how do I actually process this effectively? What do I do with this information? And kind of direct it in a way that's going to be more effective for you. So is this making sense to everybody? Maybe we'll just do a little quick pause. I'll take that as a yes. Okay, so this research, some are a little bit older on here, but without going through every single one, I just wanted to share this with you so that you can see just the different headlines of publicity and just the things that are actually being talked about with microdosing, and the different benefits that people are experiencing as well. So you can see, microdosing is showing promise for ADHD, which is great. Then you can have a whole different approach with Silicon Valley and kind of that business perspective of how, CEOs and executives, leaders are microdosing to really problem solve and accelerate, business ideas and create more harmony with their teams and ultimately increase their business. And so that's really fascinating to see. Of course, there's a lot of mothers and new parents that are microdosing, microdosing for antidepressants. And so there's just a lot that's happening right now with microdosing. And I know David kind of touched on it. It's kind of this like trendy thing that's happening, and it's amazing to see. And there's a lot of controversy that can come with that. There's a lot of great, and there's a lot of controversy, and there's a lot of different conversations to be had around it. And I kind of find that this paints a little bit of that picture, or at least highlights it a little bit, to see how many different categories microdosing and just psychedelics in general are now falling within. And so it's kind of this funny thing to me, because it's like the third wave of psychedelics, and it's like we wanted this, we all want this, and now it's like, okay, there's so much happening, there's so much information, and let's make sure that we go about this in a way that's effective and supportive for people. So with all of that, just kind of hone it in, I would say that microdosing it's a powerful catalyst. It can really unlock transformation. It can change behavioral change at a neurological level based on all the things that I just touched on. And as I also shared is being that this medicine can really initiate this process within you, it's not going to work on its own. It's going to require your intentional and your active participation, whether that's on your own or it's within a coaching, therapeutic, mentoring type of setting. Because when it comes to really making the changes within us, these are deeply rooted conditioned habits. These are years and years and years of belief systems potentially that we've kind of been stuck in, and that we've been operating from. And that may show in business, that may show in the company that you work with, that may show just in your own life, within your partner, within your family, within your own self. And so it's all connected, is my point. It's all, there's like, if you show up this way and you show up this way, there's all common threads as to why. And so ultimately, when you can pair that with what I'm going to go into in a moment, that's where you can start to really see some of these lasting changes that aren't going to just be, oh, I had this, great day microdosing this one time, I noticed this, this, and this. It's like, no, we're actually going to be making lasting, sustainable changes so that things in my life can start to be different in a way that I'm choosing them to be. And so this just kind of pretty much says the same thing in a different way, but I wanted to put this in there because some common things that I do hear from the community, and I kind of touched on this already, but when they start to microdose, you're not going to, when you Google microdosing, or when you're looking about you're looking at microdosing online and through platforms and things like that, you're typically going to read, microdosing is going to support you with these therapeutic modalities potentially, or feeling more creative or joyful or more open and more inspired. And yes, all of those things very much so are possible, and they are very common. But what you won't really read is that you're most likely going to feel emotional, and those things are going to start to rise to the surface, like I was already touching on. So just wanted to hone it in because it is really interesting. And these are some common responses that I hear. Is that, I was so emotional while microdosing. I thought that I was supposed to feel creative, joyful, and inspired. I stopped microdosing after a couple of days because I was too emotional. Some other people share that microdosing didn't work for me. I didn't realize that it would bring up past experiences, which felt too overwhelming at times. So I stopped microdosing. So I share this because I receive messages like this literally all the time. And this is why I'm so passionate, or one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about sharing this work and educating and informing, because so many people, although there's 8 million people that are working with psilocybin, so many of those people that potentially didn't make that list are actually not receiving the full opportunity of what this medicine and substance can really provide for them, simply because maybe they weren't educated on it enough, or they didn't understand how to work with it, or they didn't expect this to happen. So there was kind of a disappointment or a letdown in some sort of way. So just wanted to touch on that piece. Let me see if I want to go into this. Yeah, so I pretty much touched on this already, but this is basically just showcasing here on the left what's happening internally, what's happening neurobiologically speaking when we're working with this medicine, how our brains and our nervous systems are functioning and syncing together. And then that behavioral standpoint where I referenced kind of bringing in the active participation, so that is a behavioral change within you to make that decision to participate in this experience. When you pair those together, that's where I really find that having a framework to hold all of that, it's almost like it allows those to come together and to sync and to form. And that's where you can really start to allow your body to essentially settle into a new state, into a new pathway. And so to break that down a little bit more easily digestible, if you didn't understand that, is when we're making these changes, especially behavioral changes, emotional changes, like I said, years and years and years of patterns and specific ways of being and functioning out of, within our lives, we have to allow the time, the space to recalibrate our bodies into what we're actually wanting it to segue into. And so if we try to bypass that or miss that piece or go too fast or not really take the time to get present with ourselves and to bring in that intention, bring in the purpose, bring in the meaning, we increase the percentage of actually calling in and cultivating and creating new ways of being and new ways of how we want to essentially show up. So I find that it's really important to make sure that we kind of harmonize these together. And so this is just, again, basically repeating what I said, but taking all the benefits, right? Taking everything that I'm talking about right now, and how do we actually sustain them? How do we actually lock this in? It goes back to what I just shared, and then also creating that framework so that we can just arrive into the framework versus kind of like trying to figure it out. It's like, okay, what's going to support me in actually effectively processing, releasing, receiving, just creating the changes that I'm really desiring. And that's where I really do believe that coaching can be really valuable for this. Therapy can be really valuable for this. And so I don't think that there's one way, right? It's not just the coaching or it's not just the therapy. I believe that because it's so individualized with all of us that are working with psychedelics, it's so individualized each time we work with psychedelics, where some ways may work really well for some people. And like, for example, coaching may work really, really amazing for some people. And then a therapeutic setting may be way more valuable and way more effective for that other percentage of people. So I love to just provide options. And this is, I'm not a therapist, so the lens that I teach from is from the coaching framework. And so I obviously believe in it and I've seen the value and the benefits. And so this is just the perspective that I'm bringing in from it. So what I have learned with microdosing is that it's a skill. And there are some people in the space that talk about this really beautifully, but it's a skill. And like any skill, it takes time to really practice and master it and understand how to receive the benefits of it. And so, especially if you're somebody who's new to microdosing or you've tried it and you didn't really feel like you received that much out of it, or you've heard, other people have much more different experiences that you're curious about, whatever your reason is, I do really love the coaching perspective because it teaches you how to microdose. You can, tailor a specific protocol to your specific goals, challenges, intentions, which is really nice. And then you're really learning, okay, what does it mean to prepare for this experience? What does it mean to really integrate this experience? And it is slightly different from sitting in a high dose ceremony. There's just different approaches to take with it. And so it's nice because you're not really entering or you're not really having to second guess or question or Google and just try to find the answers as you're in the process of microdosing. You kind of just get to receive all of that all in one place. And then, of course, the accountability piece. So whether that's through the accountability and the support of, seeing your blind spots and just supporting you with just making just bigger changes in your life and calling you forth and really supporting you. Therapy is also incredible for that. And so I know, just personally speaking, any coach that I've worked with, any therapy that I've done, I never regretted it. I always grew as an individual, and that supported every single thing in my life. And so I think it's always incredible to receive support in any type of context, even if that is just through your community and your friends, and it's not coaching. It's maybe you have a community of people where they have experienced psychedelics really powerfully, and they understand how to work with them, and maybe they're supporting you. Again, it really depends on your preference. And so I think I'll pause with that so far. Questions, anything? Good. I want to be mindful of our time here. So when we start to go into, okay, like what do you mean by framework, and what are you suggesting with the framework? These are just some foundational aspects of what it really means and looks like to prepare for microdosing, and then what it looks like to continue to cultivate daily integration. So when we're talking about both of these, this is what's really kind of holding you in cultivating a positive and successful outcome. These are the elements essentially that are going to support you in whether healing, personal growth, within your business, what have you. And so it's almost like, okay, I have a plan, I have a roadmap, and then I'm sinking in my intentions and my goals and what have you into a framework that is going to be that roadmap for me. So again, there's a lot more that you can add into this, but these are just keeping it very basic, very simple. But really preparation, resourcing yourself, educating yourself, having that support in place. I find that that's, of course, very valuable. Having clear purpose, clear intentions, why you're microdosing. Something that's really important is to create the space in your life. Really make sure that you have created the space to actually go into this experience, and the space to create a consistent practice. The consistency is really where you're going to see the positive outcomes that can come into play here. I've already touched on this, but really plan to microdose 30 to 60 days, 2 to 3 times a week. Honing and refining the dosing level, which is, again, I didn't say it in the last slide, but where having that coaching element can really, really help you with that. Educating, informing yourself on any contraindications, safety, harm. There are some slides and a couple forward about that, which is nice. Informing those within your life that this is something that you're going to be doing. I find that can alleviate just some stress or some tension, and just kind of making sure you're on the same page, you're being supported. I find that that's really helpful. And then if we're talking about integration is a way of living. It's a way of just implementing things into your life. And so say you're somebody who wants to develop or cultivate a deeper meditation practice, or just a meditation practice in general, or a breathwork practice, pairing that with microdosing, and then making it like a goal to, 5 minutes a day, I'm going to, do this breathwork practice, or I'm going to do this meditation practice. That's integration. And within 30 to 60 days, you're going to start to see, as that's paired with microdosing, not that you'll be microdosing every day, but the consistency of pairing those together, you're actually going to find, wow, I'm noticing that all of a sudden this is just a new habit that I formed. All of a sudden I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying how I'm feeling. I'm enjoying the consistency of what I've created in my life. I'm also noticing potentially these other things are opening up in my life because of this beautiful practice that I've been cultivating. So it's kind of how it starts to work and form in certain ways, which is really beautiful. Integration could look like receiving support. Integration can look like giving yourself the space, the time. It could look like really nourishing your body, the basics, right? Nutrition, water, sleep, movement, things along those lines. So if there's more that you're desiring to learn within any of these, I'm happy to share it more. I just kind of wanted to keep it more foundational here. And then, yeah, just some safety measures. This is always important to just highlight, of course. I've touched on it already, but really educating yourself, making sure you have the support, making sure you understand why you're working with this medicine, what medicine you really want to work with, and really having this kind of like a preparation locked in phase before you even begin the process of microdosing so that everything is there, and you're ready to feel supported. And then, of course, you know, the white elephant in the room, legalities. So that's always a challenge. And accessibility is a challenge for many people. Especially there's only a couple states that, you know, have legalized psilocybin. There's a lot of decrim that's been happening, but there's still a lot of restriction around what those models really look like. And there's also an opportunity, depending on where you're located, to grow. But that also, you know, it has its challenges. And so accessibility can be a big reason as to why people, you know, might not be able to experience microdosing and whatnot. So again, that's really your preference and how you choose to go about that process. And I'm happy to take that offline and support you with questions that you might have around that. And then that segues into responsible sourcing. It's the same thing. If this is where you're choosing to source or have the accessibility, being mindful of it. And if you do have, you know, mushrooms, something to keep in mind is they're living, they're a plant. So storing them in the fridge, I find maintains its purity, maintains its freshness. Keeping them in a dried cupboard. Hopefully most cupboards are dry. So a dark, dry cupboard is usually really suggested as well. And then who microdosing may not be for. So this is really important as well, is of course there's adverse medication side effects that can happen when combined with microdosing. On a couple of slides, you're gonna see a QR code where you can pull up a list of the Microdosing Institute, great company, put together this amazing list that they're constantly updating, and it'll show what supplements or medications can and cannot be taken with psilocybin. So that's always nice to just check. But I'd say the main kind of red flags, or the main like no, you should not be microdosing, is of course if you or you know, I would even go as far as potentially some people in your family have a history of epilepsy, any sort of seizure disorder, bipolar, because of the activation that's happening within this substance. It can, you know, of course, trigger that. Any severe cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, heart failure, heart attack, anything along those lines, of course, is not suggested to microdose. And then just some others that fall outside of that would be if you're deficient in vitamins, specifically in magnesium and minerals, you know, make sure that you're taking that daily substance or that daily supplement. If you don't have access to trusted medicine, of course, that's a big one. You want to make sure you understand where that medicine is coming from, how it's grown, everything that goes into that. And especially now where there's so many different accessibility to a lot of different medicine, it's kind of making sure you understand where it's coming from. It's a big one. And I'll kind of let you, I'm going to share these slides with you, so I'll kind of let you just go through these and read through these. But just making sure that your body is responding well to this practice, making sure that you have the space, making sure that you have the willingness and the desire to make the changes in your life. Otherwise, it may not be as effective for you, and you may not actually receive what you want out of this. And so, yeah, just going into some dosing. So, you know, with dosing, this is a very open kind of category, I find as well. But I'd say commonly anywhere between 0.1 to 0.3 grams. You also will see that shown as 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams. This really depends on your sensitivity. This depends on your tolerance. This depends on the mushroom strain that you're working with. Some are more potent than others. I would say there's been some people, even myself included, where I'll go beneath the 100 milligrams, and sometimes 100 milligrams is feels like too much. So it really just depends on you specifically. Just because your friend is at 100 milligrams doesn't mean you're going to be at 100 milligrams. So it's really just taking the time to find what that might look like for you, and also keeping in mind that it may alter time to time depending on what's happening in your life. Food can come into play, not having food can come into play. There's a lot of different elements that can come into the room around this. I would say to stick with like fresh dried mushrooms. If you grind them up yourself, that's obviously great for measuring purposes. Sometimes people will be like, oh, I just found this chocolate and I took a bite of the chocolate, but all of a sudden it was not a microdose and they're in a completely different experience. And so if you can understand what's actually in them and how much they're measured out as, that's a really good approach to take. And then kind of an approach to also take within the space that's talked about is start low, go slow. There's no rush. There's no destination of like, I have to reach that 300 milligrams. You don't have to be competitive with it. It's more so, hey, how is this feeling for me? How is my body adjusting to this? How am I feeling in general with this dose? And then you can make adjustments. And then, yeah, like I said, if you take a little too much, you're going to start to go out of that microdosing range. And all of a sudden, you might need to go into a different set and setting, which might not be a microdosing setting. And then just some microdosing regimens. So if you research protocols, you're going to find these online. James Fadiman, amazing researcher in the space. This was actually the first protocol that came out, and it's 1 day on, 2 days off. I really like this protocol. It's a very, I would say, like beginner's protocol, but you also can use it if you are an expert in microdosing. It's just consistent, and there's a lot of data and research on it, and it works really well. And it's nice, especially being new, to start to get the feel of like, okay, 1 day on, I'm microdosing, I can start to see how this feels. And then that next day is kind of what he references as an afterglow day. It's still in the body, but it's not as present. And then that third day, okay, it should be completely out. How do I feel now comparing those days? So it's really nice to just start to get the feel of microdosing. And then the Stammet stack is great. It's a stack, so it's definitely going to be a lot more active, I would say, than just taking psilocybin. He found that stacking these together with psilocybin, with niacin, which is a vitamin B3, and then with lion's mane, there's a lot of research that he found on this being really amazing for the brain and very amazing for neurological speaking. It could be brain repair, it could be activating regions of the brain more presently. If you research it, you're going to find a lot of great information on that. Microdosing Institute, this is more so 1 day on, 1 day off. They found that this was really great for people who were on medications or looking to taper off medication. And then intuitive is, I find, more so once you understand how to microdose, you have great experience with it, you can start to just intuitively feel into, okay, when do I want to microdose? Maybe I want to focus on and hone in on this project today, for example. Great, I'm going to microdose today, understand my dosage, I understand how this is going to feel. So I just want to check in on time because I know we're literally right on the hour. I want to be mindful of that because I could always share these slides with you guys as well.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go into Q&A. We've got a few minutes left and some awesome questions. Brilliant slides. You've covered so much ground in a really deep way. And yeah, I love that we're talking about coaching is really important. And we're also talking about in using microdosing, you become a coach yourself. Like this is an inner coaching experience. It really is. So there's a couple of questions, Tiffany. Let's see how many we can get to. I guess the one question is around the differences between, say, psilocybin or LSD or microdosing. Are there particularly neurological, neuroplasticity effects that might differ, or different? Would you be directing someone to start on one rather than the other to begin with?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I find that LSD, I find common threads with them, but I do find that LSD seems to be kind of more supportive with creativity in a lot of ways and kind of more like focus and project based. Whereas I find that psilocybin is more so like body based, like getting in the body, doing more emotional processing, things along those lines. I say that very surface level though, because I do find that there's crossover between the two. I can microdose, or people can microdose with psilocybin, and they are creative and they are accessing, you know, kind of those portal dimensions is what comes in. And then there's times where people have microdose with LSD where they are flooded with emotions. So I do find that one is kind of more so like targeted towards like serotonin. One is more, which would be like LSD, whereas psilocybin is more so like dopamine, or I may have actually mixed those up. Don't mark me on that. But I do find that there's like slightly different components that do occur within just neurologically speaking. And then there also is quite crossover as well. So I know that's a little surface, but that's just kind of been my experience between the two.
Mm. And I guess part of what you're saying as well is that people are testing the waters and really feeling into what is this doing? And we have to be able to answer those questions through slowing down. And I love that you said you have to kind of deliberately make time in your day, like this is an intentional practice, so that you can think, is this the right dose? Is it the right time of day? And just really feel into it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a good point of, you know, if you're curious and one or the other, it's, you know, trying, okay, let me try LSD or let me try mushrooms and let me see how my body responds to them. I also think it is, okay, why am I actually wanting to work with either of these? And that tends to kind of support the suggestion of which one I may suggest that you start with, depending on, you know, what you're personally experiencing. I find that helps a lot too.
Awesome. I'm going to be cheeky and squeeze two questions into one to end with. And they're about, I guess, kind of the dosing regimen, Tiffany. One is about, particularly if they're a touring artist or musician, it's quite hard to stick to the protocol, say, 3 days on, 3 days off, whatever it might be. So is it still worth it? Or is it still safe and a good idea to do microdosing if the dosing regimen kind of changes? Oh, this week, yes, next week's a bit crazy. So I forgot that day. Oh, but I did that day. So is there still a point in that? Or is there any harms, pros and cons? And then the second question is around, so how long does this regimen last for? Do I have to stop after 30 days or 60 days? Is it okay? Should I take a break after 30 or 60 days? So just talk about the dosing regimen and timescales.
Yeah, great question. So, the rule of thumb is kind of give yourself 30 days to just experience it, unless there's any severe reaction and responses, happening and it's just not absolutely feeling good for you. Then of course, pause, but give yourself 30 days to just develop and cultivate new experiences and to give it time to see if this is actually supporting you. And then, usually like 60 days, some people go to 90 days, but usually rule of thumb suggestion is more so the 60 days to give yourself a reset. One, to you support the process of potential tolerance. That's definitely a real thing of building a tolerance. And then what that does is that tends to need a higher dose of medicine, and then that can continue to add and add. So it's nice to just pause. But even more importantly is to check in with yourself and reevaluate, okay, over the last 30 to 60, potentially 90 days, what have I created in my life? Do I actually notice things that have changed from the beginning of starting this? And it's almost like reevaluating what has actually shifted in my life. Is this actually supporting me? Is this actually helping me? Am I actually, creating the integration, the discipline to cultivate these desires? And so that one I find is really crucial. And then, the first part of the question, with the dosing and the days and, it's like, do I have to be so strict with it? And does it have to be this amount every single time? No, it doesn't. And I find that those of us that are new to it, I find that the consistency is nice, especially just in the beginning. Like even the first week or two, it's like, okay, let's try to, once you find a dosing that feels really good, let's try to just stick with that for a couple weeks to just see how your body's responding, see how that experience is for you. And then kind of once you get the flow of it, it's nice to play with different doses. Honestly, it's nice to be like, okay, now that I understand how this feels a little bit, like I feel good with this. What if I what if I increase it a little bit and maybe my intention shift from creativity to going on a hike and just like being in nature and doing that kind of exploration. That is phenomenal to maybe increase the dose a little bit if it feels good and go out and see what that experience might look like. I think it's also nice to play with the days as well. I would say you were going into it with, I'm going to microdose Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then all of a sudden you're traveling or things are happening. It's like, okay, you don't have to microdose Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do find just the consistency of maybe 2 to 3 times throughout that week tend to bring in the most value and the most, I guess the most positive outcome is what I found. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
That was awesome, Tiffany. Thank you. And do you have a minute for one more question, or do you need to jump?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. Caesar asked an awesome question in the chat, and that was, do you think at some point, maybe are we close to that point, doctors will prescribe microdosing for maybe to treat particular conditions or not? Maybe just because they think it's a healthy part of lifestyle.
Such a good question, Caesar. That's the vision that we're all holding in our own ways. At least that's the vision that I'm holding. You know, I really do. I think there's going to be restrictions around it, of course, like there is with many different things, but I do see that tracking towards that direction. You know, of course, it's a touchy subject. We bring in the indigenous and we bring in the culture and we bring in just the resistance to big pharma and the medical system and the government having their hands on psychedelics. But at the end of the day, I see it as it's all going to exist. Unfortunately, it's all going to exist in its own way. And I find that to actually be a positive for accessibility. And so, like I touched on earlier before, there may be more people that gravitate more towards like ceremonial coaching, mentoring type of experience, whereas many people may benefit a lot more from the insurance, medical, doctor prescribing approach. That may feel a lot more safe and a lot more supportive for people. So I do think that down the road, years down the road, I do see that existing within the medical model.
Amen. May it
Hallelujah.
be so. Yeah, and because it's giving us that more intimate relationship with ourselves, with our body, with our energy, and with relationships, and we're tracking it. How's it evolving day by day?
Yeah.
Ooh, it's a beautiful invitation.
Yeah.
So, folks, this has been amazing. We needed more time. Just to tell everyone, this has been a vital psychedelic conversation. And if you are interested in hearing more and learning more about our vital course that starts in September, go to vitalpsychedelictraining.com. And particularly if you're interested in microdosing, that is one of our 5 majors that you can actually specialize in and graduate in as a certificate in integrative psychedelic studies with a specialization in microdosing. So yeah, that could be you. Tiffany, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was so enjoyable, and I hope that it was serving and supportive for all of you. And yeah, if you have any questions, you want to reach out, feel free to contact me directly, and I'm happy to support with anything. But thank you all for staying. Thank you, David, Psychedelics Today. This was a pleasure.
Yeah. Looking forward to doing lots more, Tiffany. Thank you. And have a great day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.